Hello everyone, welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. I'm here to review Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, I'm going to share non-spoiler thoughts, my general review of it and give it a score, and then I'll give a spoiler warning and talk a bit about the spoilers, so rest assured you are safe here. So, this is a film that has been hyped up for a while. For some people who haven't really been feeling it with Marvel movies. We had a long break. This is the only Marvel Studios film of this year. 8 months ago, last one we had The Marvels, which I thought was fine. It was entertaining. I didn't think it was terrible like lots of other people had been saying. It got a lot of unwarranted hate. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 I thought was incredible last year. But that film did make me feel like it did some things better that were missing from some of the other recent MCU movies. So it kind of had this vibe that Deadpool and Wolverine is supposed to be something that hypes people up again and gets them more excited. And yeah, it was very exciting, although looking forward to it. It was exciting, but you had these fans online talking about the footage in the trailer not looking very good, and so that kind of soured things. And you also had some stuff coming out, spoilers of cameos and Easter eggs and such, whether that be via reporting or via the marketing and trailers. And so, because of those factors, as the movie got closer, I was kind of reconsidering whether I wanted to see it day one. And last minute, I decided, okay, I'll go ahead and go see it Thursday, 3 p.m. And I went to this theater where Look Cinemas, where they serve food and drinks. They had the Deadpool drink and the Wolverine drink. I liked the Wolverine one better. And there's a fourth wall barbecue burger, so good stuff. I was ready for this film, ready to enjoy it, and then I kind of just didn't. Yeah, I was really surprised that I did not enjoy this film. There were things here and there I kind of thought were funny, but overall it didn't feel as hilarious. Deadpool 1, I think I gave an 8, and Deadpool 2 an 8.5. But yeah, this one I just wasn't really vibing with it. And it's funny because I do this podcast called Delayed Replay where I get friends on the show, different friend each time, and recap and review a movie that got delayed as if it came out on time. So, we'd make stuff up and make up a plot. And the one we did for Deadpool 3 last year felt very much like a fan service movie, which is basically what Deadpool and Wolverine is. And it was fun coming up with the plot, and in the episode we were like, yeah, we enjoyed this movie, but the act of actually watching this, watching Deadpool and Wolverine, I just wasn't really vibing with it. I kind of think maybe part of that is due to, like I said, the stuff that I've been spoiled. So when other surprises happened, I wasn't really all that impressed with them. But also the fact that we've had other movies here and there that have been giving us fan service, and it's like now I feel kind of over fan service. Like it feels very old hat now, and I feel silly saying this about like a Deadpool movie, all these different critiques, oh, it had too many of these types of things, but that's just how I was feeling. I just wasn't vibing with this one. Now, has my sense of humor changed in the 6 years since Deadpool 2 come out? Maybe a little. I guess it's possible, but I don't think it's changed too much. I kind of have the sense that the first two films were part of what made them so good was what they were able to do in spite of their limitations. Here, this movie has access to a lot more Marvel stuff, and yet it has messy results in my eyes. Unfortunately, Cable is not in this film, and I don't know, maybe it's a commentary on cable, like going by the wayside, and now streaming has taken over. Domino is also noticeably absent. And yeah, these character absences are probably to make room for all these other characters who are in the movie, and maybe the people making this felt like they didn't have something for everyone to do, but it's definitely something that people have noticed, and they're missing some of these other characters. Made me wish I was watching other movies. Like when you had the wasteland scene, and there were these references to the Mad Max world, and it made me really wish I was watching Furiosa instead. A much better film. And I wish that I was enjoying Deadpool and Wolverine almost as much as Furiosa. Like I wish that it was at least close to that level. Furiosa is such an incredibly made film. And Deadpool and Wolverine also feels more obsessed with how incredible the film Logan was, as opposed to being concerned with trying to make its own great movie. And Logan was such a great send off for Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. And Patrick Stewart, in my opinion, gave his best Professor X performance in that film in Logan. So Stewart's return in Multiverse of Madness, like it just felt he and the other cameos there felt wasted to me. And here in this film, Wolverine, they try to give him a little bit of an arc. Um, there is a couple sad details that I wish they could have gone deeper with. It does get a little introspective with him when it focuses a bit more on him than on Deadpool. So I do appreciate that, but overall, I feel like bringing these actors back, Multiverse of Madness for Stewart and Deadpool and Wolverine for Jackman, I feel like it wasn't worth it in the end just for the yellow hover chair and the yellow suit. It kind of has a be careful what you wish for type of feel to it, from my point of view. This is a movie that is self aware, of course. I mean, obviously, it's a Deadpool movie, and it has self deprecating humor, pointing out the shortcomings of Marvel as of late, or at least maybe alluding to even like the fan reception to some of the recent movies and the multiverse stuff feeling so tired. Yeah, like it explicitly points out the multiverse stuff being kind of overdone. So it takes shots at those types of things, but when it's pointing out the issues of Marvel movies and productions, I can't help but feel kind of annoyed. It's saying all of this as if just saying it is enough, as opposed to actually doing stuff to make a good movie. I get it's trying to be like ironic humor, but he spends so much of the runtime on all this multiverse stuff, and then saying, "Oh, multiverse stuff is overdone," like that. Um, Excuses using so much of the runtime on it and the shoddy execution in this film. And to me, it also feels like a retread of the end of She-Hulk, a show that I think, despite issues here and there, handled some of the meta stuff better and was more enjoyable overall. Here, it feels very tired, trying to do that same thing. In She-Hulk, basically giving notes to Marvel Studios of what to do better, and we're still making those same jokes 2 years later, and it just feels so frustratingly tired at this point, doing that type of bit, instead of actually, making great content. And again, this is from my perspective. Everyone has been taking this film differently. From the various people I've chatted with, half of them really loved this film, half of them didn't really like it, and unfortunately, I'm in the latter half. Um, and at times, this film also feels like a checklist for comic book fans, and it can make one super aware of how silly it is for fans to want so badly for these movies to do the bare minimum of these checklists, even if done quickly, showing the characters in an accurate fashion. And it's like, if it's just done for checklist reasons, then like why even bother? The yellow suit, for example, and like I said, like it just kind of didn't really feel all that worth it in the end. And again, like my hype for this movie may have been partially lowered by the cameos being spoiled by reporters, marketing trailers, and even Comic Con. And there's a certain excuse going around I kind of don't really buy. I'll get to that in the spoilers. Um, but it kind of gives me the feeling of, if Marvel doesn't care about spoiling cameos, then why should I care about them when they happen? And why should I be impressed when the cameos that I didn't know about but could have guessed anyway? Because of course they'd get those uh, cameos, and you know what I'm saying? Like, why should I be impressed if Marvel doesn't care to keep these things more of a surprise? So, before I go into spoilers, I'd say my score for this. Initially, I gave it a 5 out of 10, but there are some other things I've given a 4 or 5.0 that I've enjoyed less than this. I think maybe this one gets a 5.5 out of 10. But yeah, overall, Deadpool and Wolverine felt mediocre to me. I'm kind of sad that I didn't enjoy it as much as I was expecting to. But I think this is one that the masses are loving from the looks of it. I'm kind of curious, like how well this will hold up on rewatches for people. But yeah, that's how I feel about the film overall. Now, before I go into Deadpool and Wolverine spoilers, I want to touch upon the big announcement that came out from Comic Con regarding the upcoming Avengers movie. If you want to avoid that for whatever reason, then go ahead and hop off. But I don't see how this can be avoided since it'll be in the marketing and such, probably. But yeah, we got the announcement that instead of Avengers Kang Dynasty, the film is going to be titled Avengers Doomsday. And I'd seen rumors that this was going to be a young Avengers movie as well. But yeah, it's officially Avengers Doomsday. And there's also stuff about the Fantastic Four movie that's pretty exciting. The Fantastic Four First Steps. I'm not in love with the title, but I'm pretty excited about that film. But regarding Avengers Doomsday, kind of funny that they announced that the same day Superman and Lois released a clip of Superman fighting Doomsday for the final season. They announced who is playing Victor Von Doom, and it is Robert Downey Jr. Now, some people seem excited about this. You know, maybe it's the excitement of seeing Downey Jr. back in the franchise, but lots of other people that I've talked to, and people online as well, are really not into this idea, and I'm not really excited by this either, because again, it's doing the whole thing of bringing back the familiar face after a perfect ending. I thought Stark had a nice ending in Avengers Endgame, a heroic sacrifice. And so this feels kind of like another example of just bringing back a familiar face for the heck of it, for the fan service. Some people say out of desperation, I guess after Marvel has pivoted. I mean, it's understandable that they'd feel shaky about the Kang situation given the behind the scenes stuff. I don't know why they couldn't just recast the character. Like, if it's a contractual thing, I kind of wonder why that's the case.
So it seems that Loki is the end of the Kang story.
It is a little bit disappointing that we might not get to see like that Kang plan come to fruition, even with a different actor. I'm probably always gonna be curious, like what that would have been. I don't know if maybe they'd circle back to that type of story at a later point. But in the meantime, they're going with this Doctor Doom story, and it's been pointed out to me that in the comics, there have been connections from Tony Stark to Doctor Doom. Apparently, there might be like a body possession type thing in some comic story. There's also the variant option, of course, because of the multiverse and whatnot. And I've not read these comic stories, so I'm not an expert on those particular stories. But just hearing the premises, it sounds kind of goofy to me. And again, it really feels like the multiverse is, if that is the reason they're going with it, it feels like an excuse to, if they do a character a certain way, they can do it that way and then be like, oh, but don't worry, you'll see them at like the real version like later on. I kind of worry and wonder if this is maybe another Iron Man 3 situation where we get someone pretending to be the Mandarin, and then later on, like eventually, after a real long time, we finally get the real Mandarin. I kind of wonder if something like that's at play. Maybe, for all I know, maybe the movie will begin with Robert Downey Jr. as some sort of version of Doctor Doom, maybe a Doctor Doom from the Fantastic Four's universe, and then the real Doctor Doom shows up not long after and like defeats him or something. Or maybe Secret Wars, Avengers 6. That could reboot things, and maybe after then we'll get the mainline Doctor Doom that we may have going forward. Maybe they're keeping the casting there a surprise, which is something I kind of wish had been done with Peter Parker Spider-Man for Civil War. Back in the day, I was speculating, oh, the comic, had the reveal where he takes off his mask for the public. It'd be kind of a nice nod if for the Civil War movie we don't know who's playing Spider-Man, and then as a sort of tip of the hat to that, we don't find out which actor is playing him until he like takes off his mask at some point in the movie. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I kind of wonder if there's like maybe a surprise at play, and maybe they have just brought back Robert Downey Jr. Partially because of whatever the comic book connection may be, if those are like legitimate things, and maybe partially to win back some good faith from some of the fans who haven't been liking how the Kang stuff has been going down, and are feeling unexcited about that story arc, and some of the fans who are not that into some of the recent films. So yeah, I don't know, but overall, like bringing back a familiar actor, especially one who played a character who got such a great send off, it just doesn't really do much for me. And it again makes me wonder, why can't we just have the actual, if there is gonna be like a quote unquote real Doctor Doom later on after this Robert Downey Jr. version, why can't we get that first sooner? You know, it kind of feels like they didn't have as much faith in Avengers 5, and they basically brought Robert Downey Jr. back as a saving throw type thing. So yeah, and I could be proven wrong. I'm open to the possibility that the movie can prove me wrong and that it'll all feel worth it. But right now, it just feels really strange, and I don't really quite get it. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling about that sort of thing. And it again feels like the Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart stuff. And for what it's worth, Hugh Jackman has been reiterating that he really wanted to do Deadpool and Wolverine, and Robert Downey Jr. maybe he really wants to play Doctor Doom, but I don't know. It's couldn't there have been like an actor who was not familiar and could still like be super suitable for the role? Like I don't know. Like it's kind of a it really boggles the mind at the moment. And I guess right now I'm just not really all that excited about the announcement. But now to get into the spoilers proper for Deadpool and Wolverine. So this is your spoiler warning, your spoiler alert, whatever the heck you want to call it. So spoiler alert, I'm super serious. Like, stop the video and save it somewhere and come back after you've seen the movie. Or if you just don't care, you can go ahead and keep watching. So I did think it was kind of funny that the TVA, their involvement in this film, we had assumed that it had to do with Deadpool's time traveling at the end of Deadpool 2, and they just sort of say, "Oh no, that's not why we're here," and kind of subverting our expectations on that, which I thought was kind of funny. But they basically are telling Deadpool that he can join the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which he had tried to join 6 years previously. We do get a scene between him and Happy Hogan, and this scene is dated March 14th, 2018, so I guess it's shortly before the events of Infinity War. And in that scene, Deadpool, Wade Wilson, he is sort of expecting Robert Downey Jr. to show up, which is kind of funny in hindsight because, throughout the film, I kind of expected that he would show up, but he didn't. And then we got the announcement that he's coming back, but as Doctor Doom, basically. But yeah, in that scene, he really wanted to be an Avenger. And then we got a 6 years later, so it might be 2024. Well, it's might be complicated. I'll get back to that later on. But yeah, Wade is back on his Earth, on Earth. Is it 1005 or 10,005? It's one of those. But yeah, the Earth where all the X-Men movies took place. And he's hanging out with his friends and whatnot. And the TVA gets him, and they explain to him that his universe is dying, and that's because of the death of Wolverine in his film Logan, which takes place in 2029. Apparently, Logan is an anchor for that universe, and so since he dies, that means that the universe dies. Wade is not happy about his universe dying because, all the people that he loves are there. And so he takes matters into his own hands, steals a device. He goes to Logan's gravesite and digs him up because he thinks that because of his regenerative powers, he can't be really dead, but he digs him up. He's a skeleton. And he basically uses the skeleton as a shield and as weapons to fight against the TVA agents. And I had mixed feelings about this sequence, the use of Logan's skeleton. I was trying to tell myself, maybe I can get on board with this because it's a Deadpool movie. Deadpool and Wolverine, but you know what I mean. But I think, I don't know, whenever I watch Logan and get to the ending, is that going to be undercut by thoughts of, oh, in the future, Deadpool will dig up his skeleton and use it as a shield and whatnot? Like, I don't know. And again, it reminds me of how great of a film Logan is, whereas this just pales in comparison to it. And Laura X-23, she shows up later in the film, and the more you think about it, you wonder, like, how would she feel about Wade doing this with her father's skeleton? And I don't recall that ever gets addressed, really. So it's kind of a thing that sort of bothers me. In the end, it kind of didn't feel earned to me because the movie overall just didn't really hit for me.
Now, regarding Daphne and her being spoiled in the marketing, apparently that was due to her wanting to be at the red carpet premiere. And supposedly, if she's at the premiere, people are like, oh, she's in the movie. But haven't there been instances in the past where people involved in a franchise, but not necessarily in the new thing, still attend a red carpet premiere anyway? I feel like that's happened in stuff like Star Wars, hasn't it? So I'm not sure that I really buy this excuse for giving that away in the trailers and such.
And later on, we do get Chris Evans back, and they try to make you think that it's Captain America, but he says flame on, and he's the Human Torch. And It was kind of a funny bit, but he's also back just to be killed off unceremoniously. So it really feels like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness all over again. And Professor X and Logan die in Logan, but I feel like there's more story there and it feels more organic, whereas with these other things, it doesn't quite feel right to me, although I know that'll vary from person to person. But yeah, Johnny Storm is killed off unceremoniously, and his death is basically used as a joke. And it's a really weird vibe because it feels like this movie is trying to simultaneously honor the pre MCU Marvel movies, from Fox and from New Line Cinema and such, while also, I guess, kind of acknowledging that it's not all good.
All these Fox Marvel references feel weird to me because it really feels like this has been a really slow death for the Fox side of Marvel. We had Dark Phoenix, which was delayed from 2018 to 2019, supposed to be the final mainline X-Men film of that part of the franchise. And then we had the New Mutants, which got delayed a couple of years. That one was supposed to come out in 2018 and got pushed back a couple years to 2020. And so that felt like the end of the Fox Marvel stuff, albeit one that sort of went under the radar. And now we're still trying to close the book on this, like 4 years after that. Like, what's going on here? It really feels weird to me. And it's nice that they're celebrating the old stuff, but some of that older stuff isn't quite as good as it could have been. Some of it I didn't think was as bad as people say. Some of it I thought was average, but still, not all of it was necessarily great. And I think part of why this feels weird to me is it kind of feels into the revisionist stuff that I see in my feed for certain franchises, where, certain things that people talked down about for a long time and then all of a sudden they're praising it, uh, and sometimes even at the expense of the newer stuff. And so I don't know, it just all feels really weird to me.
I think it's kind of nice that they tried to give some of the actors like one last shot in the spotlight as these particular characters, but again, like whenever they showed up, I wasn't really that surprised. I did not expect to see Jennifer Garner as Elektra. I did not expect to see Wesley Snipes as Blade. Did not expect to see Channing Tatum as Gambit, but when he showed up, I was like, oh, okay, so they're referencing the Gambit film that he was attached to that was in development hell. Got it. And you see like some of these other mutant characters. Pyro was in the marketing, I believe, and Sabretooth's beheading was spoiled by the reporting. Like, I don't get why people were like really keen on spoiling that, but yeah, it's basically very quick as you'd expect.
And in the film, there's a scene in a car where Deadpool and Wolverine fight each other because, of course, they would fight each other. The comic book checklist. And it just feels, I just feel so super aware of the checklist when I look at moments like this where the superheroes fight each other because it's what the fans want for some reason.
Again, like there are these fan service moments, like when Wade sees the different versions of Wolverine, like the different suits and sizes of Wolverines. Again, it just feels like a checklist. And Henry Cavill's Wolverine, I'd kind of heard rumblings of that, so I was not surprised about it. It was kind of funny, but I kind of wonder if I would have found it funnier if I didn't know ahead of time. And Wesley Snipes' Blade, he makes a mention that he is the only Blade, and then Deadpool looks at the camera and it's like, yeah, we've been taking a long time making a Blade movie, and at least that's the how I read that stare into the camera, because it's been really frustrating how long it's been taking to make a Blade movie. You know, he was teased at the end of Eternals, and then there's nothing after that. You know, that was almost 3 years ago, and you hear all these reports that there's all this shuffling around. It's like, how hard is it to make a Blade movie? And I think this also kind of ignores the live action Blade TV show where a different actor played Blade, so there's that as well. Um, and you know, there's all this multiverse stuff going on, and when Deadpool sees all of his other selves, he says the multiverse stuff is like overdone. Let's take the L and stop. And you know, again, like I said, it feels like this film is smugly patting itself on the back, saying, "Oh, see, we're super aware of this being like too much and of all of our shortcomings." But it's like, no, that does not excuse you from having these shortcomings, you know? Um, so I was also confused about what's the status quo at the end of this film. You know, obviously, you know, if you've seen the movie Wolverine and Deadpool, they work together to save Deadpool's universe, Earth 1005 or 10,005, whichever it is. And Wolverine, you know, he came from a different universe where the X-Men died because he was out drinking, which, again, I feel like they could have gone deeper, like shown a bit more of that story. But yeah, Wolverine ends up in Deadpool's universe, and it's like, what year is it when they are there? Because we're told that the timeline is now regenerating. So does that mean that the events of the film Logan are erased? Or do they still happen? And like, what year are Deadpool and Wolverine and Laura in now? Because if it's 2024, you know, there's a 2018 scene where Deadpool visits the MCU, and then it says 6 years later, but it's in a different universe. So, what was it still 6 years after 2018? And if it's 2024, are there now two Lauras running around? You know, a younger one and this older one that we see here, and this Wolverine, as well as the one who will eventually die in the events of Logan. Is this shortly before the X-Men are killed in the backstory of Logan? I believe in Logan it's mentioned to have happened like 5 years prior or something like that. And again, Logan takes place in 2029. Are there two of each, or do they replace their counterparts? I don't remember if that's ever really explained. And like I said, the 2018 scene was in the MCU, you know, Earth 616, according to this film. So, for all we know, maybe it was 2018 there, but mid 2020s for Deadpool, and then the 6 years later could be like early 2030s or something, but it's not really clear to me. And again, like, mutants are still around, Colossus is still around. So did the extinction prior to Logan still happen, or are mutants flourishing again? Like, it's not really clear. And I know it's like silly to talk about continuity when it comes to Deadpool, but it really gets me curious, like, what actually is the status quo now? So yeah, I have all these questions. This film doesn't have the answers. I don't know if these things will be answered. And in the end, I was just left feeling like this was kind of just a fan service movie. The villains were somewhat interesting, but I don't know. Like, the storyline, it feels all over the place. And yeah, and by the point that it got to the credits and you hear the Green Day song "Good Riddance," the montage of like behind the scenes footage of pre MCU films, it's supposed to be very heartwarming and whatnot. But to me, I was like, okay, I'm just kind of over this. I want to go home now. And I feel really bad saying that because it's supposed to be like a celebration of the actors, but because of the movie I just saw that I didn't vibe with, I was just kind of whatever about it.
The integration of mutants into the MCU, like fully integrating them, it's felt very hurry up and wait to me. We've gotten hints here and there in Ms. Marvel and The Marvels, although with The Marvels that showed a different universe. So I kind of wonder um, if that particular post credit scene takes place in Earth 10,005 or if it's a variant of Beast that we see who just so happens to be played by the same actor. Yeah, I'm really wondering, like, when are we properly gonna fully explore mutants being in Earth 616 or the MCU or whatever?
So yeah, that's how I feel about Deadpool and Wolverine. Maybe there are some things I forgot to mention. Maybe there are some things that some of you can correct me on if I'm like off on certain details and whatnot. But yeah, this was a dud for me. But I don't think Marvel is dead. But I also am not that excited about this Doctor Doom announcement. Hoping that once we get past that like Doomsday and Secret Wars, that maybe the stuff after will be like great and feel very fresh and new, and maybe all this will feel worth it in a way. I think I'll definitely look back on a few of these films and be like, yeah, they really could have done that better. But there are certain things where even being a writer myself, I look at the premise and I'm still not really sure what could have been done to improve it. But yeah, I just didn't vibe with it. Sometimes there are just things that just don't do it for me, and that's pretty much it. But yeah, um, those are my thoughts. And thanks for tuning in. And until next time, I'll see you all again on Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. Bye.